Hello everyone, welcome back to another special edition of Beneath the Lift Tower. Once again, my name's Charles McGilvray and I'm joined by Jess and Simon Stacey as always. However, as I said, this is a special edition and we are joined by a great Saintsman of recent times. Hailing from the northwest of England, Blackpool, he started his career with Sale Sharks, going on to make 99 appearances, including a league title in the 05-06 season. Brief spell at Stade Francais, the Parisian capital, before joining Northampton in 2008, going on to make 226 appearances over a decade at the club, including 2 Challenge Cup victories and, of course, that all-important Premiership title in 2014. Following his career, he stayed involved in the game. RPA General Secretary, I believe, is his current role, as well as doing various commentaries on TNT. He also made an appearance, a very special appearance, on MasterChef, making the semi-finals, going out to that perennial failing of lamb fat rendering. Everyone, Christian Day, Saint 1859. How you doing, Christian?
I'm very well, thanks. Good to be on the show.
Brilliant. It'd be great to start by getting an understanding of your intro into rugby. I mean, coming from the northwest of England, that's a real, in my mind, football territory. We had John Slyton on before, and he grew up in North Yorkshire, which is real rugby league world, and it was interesting to see his way in. But my view of the northwest is football, especially with the sort of Manchester teams.
It is, and I live in Manchester now, and football is very much king here. To give you an illustration of that, my daughters play junior level football, and they just play for our local team. And in our local club, and it's only a small club, they run 6 boys teams and 2 girls teams per age group. So it shows you how popular football is and how it's kind of deeply ingrained in Manchester. But coming from Blackpool, I played as a junior club at Fylde, which is quite a famous junior club because it was the club of Bill Beaumont. And I started there when I was 7. Basically, my little mate's dad down the road said he was going down and took me along and played there. Quite remarkably, played with Richard Wigglesworth from about 9 years old. Obviously went on to make 300 appearances in the Prem, so that under 10s team had 500 Premiership appearances in it. And then I was lucky enough to go to a school that had a rugby master called John Bevan, who was a former British Lion and Wales international. It wasn't a public school or anything like that, but had a real push to play rugby because of him. I was just lucky enough to play all the age groups at school and was good enough, luckily, eventually to end up at Sale Sharks.
It was an interesting period of time that you were at Sale as well. They had that real good spell of leading up to that title-winning year with some phenomenal talent around that squad at the time. It was was it Philip Santandrea at the time? Must have been a great period to be involved with Sale and a bit of an uprising of rugby in the northwest.
Yeah, so initially I signed with Steve Diamond and Jim Malander, but I was actually a student for my first 4 years. I was supposed to be going to a different university, but then did a bit of a U-turn last minute and ended up playing for Sale and going to Manchester. And then by the time I was 19, I was playing for the first team, and my university life got a lot quieter. So that was quite challenging. I managed to get through that. But initially, under Jim and Dimes, there was some really good young English talent. So we had Charlie Hodgson, Mark Cueto, Andy Tittrell, who were all only 2 years older than me, but very quickly got in the England team and Lions. And then in my age group, there was myself, Wiggy, Magnus Lund, Warren Sprague, Andy Kiriakou, who all went on to various different things in rugby. So we had a really good crop of young English players. And then Philippe came in to work with Jim initially, but then Jim moved on, and Philippe brought with him some real superstars. So yeah, ended up playing with Oh, and of course, I've forgotten to mention Jason Robinson was there as well, which he was quite.
Yeah.
But then Philippe brought with him, Seb Chabal was the biggest name, but there was Chabal, Bruno, Lionel Four, who were all French internationals, and then you had the likes of Jason White and trying to think who else, Mark Taylor, real stars of the game. And yeah, we had a good couple of seasons where I think the season we won it, we topped the table and then won the playoffs, which was nice. So yeah, good times and nice representing the place, where you grew up.
What was the the decision around, you went to Stade Francais for sort of a spell, and I've sort of read that you were maybe in that period and maybe in a bit of the wilderness before coming to Northampton. Is that sort of a fair representation?
I think it shows you how brutal professional sport can be. So at 21, I was England under 21's captain. I won the Premiership and was Young Player of the Year. And everything was rosy. And then 2 years later, the club came to me on a Thursday night and was like, "Yeah, we want you to leave." And that was kind of the end of it for me at Sale. So it wasn't planned. It was just I kind of fell out of favour a little bit, and Philippe wanted to bring in, I think it was Brent Cobain, who was a Wales second row at the time, and they needed to get rid of some space in the cap. So I got offered to go to Stade on a Thursday night. I asked some advice, signed the contract on the Friday, and I was in Paris on the Sunday. So it was, it was quite a spectacular moving on. I mean, I'd fallen out of rugby a little. I'd fallen out of love with rugby a little bit at that point in time. Various reasons. I actually got offered a couple of good jobs in the city and was weighing up what I wanted to do. But going to Paris was great in terms of I only played 4 games, but had a brilliant time, got to play with some amazing players and made me fall in love with rugby a little bit again.
Amazing. Yeah, I imagine that was for a young man, quite a learning curve, moving to Paris and experiencing all sorts of new things.
Yeah, so I arrived on the Sunday, and the team manager literally met me at the airport, gave me 2 sets of keys, one for a car, one for a flat, and that was it. He just took off. I was living in central Paris in a place called Boulogne, which was really nice. But I literally lived in a shoebox. It was crazy, really. But it was great fun, and like I said, I got to play with the likes of Dimi Soareski, Hernandez, Sergio Parise, some proper global stars. And it was, the luminous pink kit and the dancing girls, and it was, really mad.
Have you retained any of the French language since you left?
Yeah, so I can speak French pretty well. Listening is harder, particularly to French people, because they just go so quick and use all kinds of slang and everything else with it. But I can speak fairly well. I can normally ask for what I'm after and buy what I'm after. So I actually really enjoyed that aspect. And it was actually quite hard to learn because all the young people wanted to speak English. They all wanted to improve their English and speak English. And all the old guys just wanted to speak French and weren't helpful in the slightest. So it was difficult, but I used to go to training each day with my my Duolingo CDs and try and learn different bits and pieces.
So, Christian, what brought you to sunny Northampton then?
Yeah, so again, a bit of a strange one. So obviously, Victor Matfield was supposed to be signing for Saints that year, and I think he did a U-turn in kind of March, April time when I was out in Paris, and so Jim Malander was recruiting with Steve Diamond at the time for Saints, who were in the Championship. And yeah, I just got a phone call from Steve Diamond and said, would I be interested in coming? Initially, just as a bit of a squad filler, I think. But I turned up kind of fit and firing. The French season didn't finish till July, and I went straight into pre-season with Saints. And I just think I was probably very excited to be there and was really fit, and I had a really good pre-season, and yeah, I kind of got my foot in the door, and loved it. I've got to say, I loved every minute of being in Northampton. Really, it's just such a unique kind of rugby town. I say unique, but it's a rugby town, much alike kind of Gloucester and one or two other places where I always enjoyed playing. But I just think it's a fabulous club run by brilliant people, and it's running the right way. So really good times for me at Northampton. It just fit me really well. It fit my kind of ethos and the way I look at things. And like I said, I just really enjoyed my time.
It was that squad that you joined was one of my favourites, because it was almost like a transitional squad in the sense that you had some of the older names like Bruce Johanna, Tom Smith, some massive legends of the club, but then you had some of the younger guys like yourself, Ben Foden, Lee Dixon, all coming through as well, and that became the foundation for the later success. But that first year you won that Challenge Cup, and you just look at the squad and go, it was so diverse it wasn't like it is now where it's quite predominantly young. It was all sorts of people from all sorts of parts of the world and backgrounds of rugby coming together to sort of take the club forward.
Yeah, it was very, very young. Looking back now, I mean, I was definitely one of the older players, and I was only 25 or something like that when I came. So it was a very, very young squad. But very talented. That's the way Jim and Nobby went about it. They recruited a lot of the young guys they used through kind of England in the 20s, and I think they landed on a fly half in Stephen Myler, who was there for 10, 12 years and always did the job. And around that, they built a really, really good team. Like you say, there were one or two legends. Tom Smith was one. Bruce was definitely another, but it was clear it was like you said, a very transitional team. But really, that team probably overachieved a little bit. Like you say, we won the European Shield in the first year, but I think we were in a European Cup final 2-3 years later, which was probably overachieving at that point. The team that ended up winning the Premiership, and actually the year after, I think was probably an even better team. That was the peak of that era, undoubtedly, in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, I sort of saying to the other two earlier that you're almost like that jockey that just happens to pick the right horse for the Grand National, because don't take that to disrespectful way, but you've won the league twice with two teams that aren't perennial winners of the tournament. Sale and Northampton have got one each in their history, and you're part of both squads. It's sort of you look back at your career and you must think, wow, you achieved an awful lot with the two clubs.
Yeah, two very different times. I mean, like I said, at Sale, I was really young. I was only 21. I was a university student. I was just kind of riding it, and everything was going well for me. Whereas at Saints, I was probably at the peak of my playing abilities the year we won it and the year after, and I was quite a mature player by that time. And as well, I think that team knew we were one of the best teams, and we should probably be winning one of these big trophies. We had a real depth of talent. We really did. We probably had 2 15s that could challenge anyone on our day. So I think we probably knew, like I said, we knew we had a really good shot at winning either of those years, and we were lucky enough to win it once, which, like you say, some people never get a chance to win anything. So it's very lucky to be part of those teams.
Christian, which squad would you say was better? The Sale squad or the Saints squad? I know they're so different, but you played it.
The Saints team had much better depth, I'll say that. Like I said, I think we could have put out 30 players who could do a job on any given day, and I think that showed that year, because we won the Prem, we won the European Shield, and we got to the final of the Domestic Cup with 3 pretty different looking squads that took part in those. I was one of the lucky ones who got to play. I got to play the big games and the small games. I didn't get arrested for anything. So the Saints team had more depth. I just think that Sale team had some real megastars in it. If you talk about rugby of the last 20 years, who were the most famous players. I think a lot of people would say Jason Robinson and Sebastian Chabal. But like I said, it's just really different. I actually probably think the Saints team was probably better on balance. I think we were a really well-rounded team. A few people have asked recently, who's better, the Saints team today or our team that won it? And I always answer, I think the Saints team today are doing it their own way. They're doing it a different way. But I do think that the Prem winning team that I was part of was really well-rounded. We could beat teams up. We had a really strong set piece. We had a really physical, powerful back row, and we had a back line that could do the job as well. So a really consistent team, and really proud to be a small part of it.
And what was that experience like then? On obviously, because we're going to talk about this a bit later, but we've got obviously another final now coming up this Saturday. But what was that like 10 years ago on that day to be able to lift that trophy? What was that day like?
Well, so I actually managed to get injured about 4 weeks before the final. And who was that against? I got injured against Saracens away on their plastic pitch, and it was kind of a bit touch and go. Would I be fit? And I came back, and I think I benched. I benched that game. I think I benched the semi-final. Yeah, I did. I came back for the semi-final, was bench, and then benched the European final, then benched the big final. So obviously for me, I'd started practically every game that year. So to come back at the end and not be starting was a little bit painful, if I'm honest. But Sam Dickinson came in, played superbly well, and credit to him, and what a great bloke he is. So I kind of was grinding my teeth a little bit, sat on the bench, but then I was sat next to Dylan Hartley, Phil Dowson. That shows you the depth we had. The Prem final, what do I remember? I remember it was a red hot day. I remember coming through the West car park and it just being crazy. George North walking around with a selfie stick, which at the time was like unheard of. No one did that, and he was walking around with his selfie stick taking videos. And then the game itself's a bit of a blur. Like I said, I was on the bench, but I came on at 50 minutes, and of course it went to extra time, so I ended up playing an hour, which was more than the starters played. The game itself, I think it was really kind of back and forth, wasn't it? I've never watched the game back. I just remember it was being really tight. Saracens were doing their thing of kind of knocking penalties over and just staying in the game. But I do remember it went to extra time, and kind of we had like Tom Wood, Callum Clark, who were kind of our energy drivers, and them saying, we've come so far, we're not losing it now. And then the agony of kind of 5 minutes of the TMO, obviously, and then it was just kind of madness with everyone running around celebrating. So it's all a bit of a blur. And people often say, what's it like playing in those kind of games? It's a bit weird because it's not really any different to any other club game, because as a player, you only really look at pitch level. You only really look up when the ball's out of play, or you're looking at the screens for replays and stuff like that. So it was just a really fast-paced, physical game, back and forth. But then post-game, it was just mega. I just remember the crowd, and I had my eldest daughter on the pitch with me, and yeah, it was just really good memories then in the changing rooms, and then back at Franklin's Gardens, and the whole day after. It was just brilliant.
Interesting. That so obviously, yeah, Sam Dickinson came in for yourself in the game, but it was Sammy Manua who was wearing your jersey. Comparing the two teams, then the two finals, who you've got a 10-meter channel to defend. Who you fancying yourself against the most, Sammy or Sebastian Chabal?
Oh God. I'd probably fancy myself against Seb Chabal more than Sammy. Sammy was such a unique unique person and unique player with it as well. I remember I was interviewed the kind of the pre-season when he arrived, and no one really knew who he was, and it was like, what's Samu like? And I said in the interview, I was like, he's a bit of a freak. Like he is an absolute freak of nature, a man who was 19 stone, incredibly powerful, and yet could run like a back, could sidestep, could really skillful. He was an absolute freak of nature, but could he hit hard in defence, and that's just that NFL kind of training that he had through college. But I mean, where Sammy was really unique was off the field, because he came from California, but he just was like from a different planet. Like he'd turn up in clothes that he'd made himself. He started a little biker gang with all the other islanders, where they all had their own little BMX bike that they painted, and he'd go cruising around town with his speaker on the back of his bike, and he was just from a different place. But again, a great guy. I think he had a pretty dark past, if I'm being honest, but he was a real asset to that team and to the kind of ethos of the team as well. He kept us really grounded. There was no egos around him. He was the enforcer in a good way for Saints.
Yeah, Christian, you were like at the time at your peak of your career, you're one of the best locks in the Premiership, and I still have you top of my list as the unluckiest player never to get a cap for England. Why do you think that was? Because in my opinion, it's absolutely disgraceful.
You know, I don't know. And loads of people will say, you know, do you regret it? And I don't regret it at all, to be honest. It would have been nice, but you just don't get there. You know, I got really close. I was in 2 Six Nations squads. I played for England A, played every England age group. So I was kind of good enough, just never quite got picked. There were some other good second rows around. But no, just never quite lucky enough to get picked into that team. But that doesn't define, you know, what you do as a player, and the times I had with the club is probably where, you know, I think fondest. I don't think, oh wow, I got to train at Pennyhill Park. I would value the time I had at Saints above all others. So it's you know, no major regret.
It's often sort of mentioned around, you know, when, like, you know, we definitely believe that at that period of time you were one of the premium locks in the country, and you should have been selected at some point over your career. But, you know, when you get those players that sort of stand out but don't get selected, it's often sort of a fan dialogue sort of scenario where they said, oh, well, he doesn't play for a fashionable club, so he's not going to be selected. Where, you know, playing for the 2 clubs that you played for in the Premiership, do you think there is an element of that, you know, if you played for Tigers or played for Sarries, you would have had a better chance of being in those sort of selection calls?
Yeah, it probably can help. It depends on who the head coach for England is at the time and where their allegiances are. It also depends on what kind of a game they want to play. I always think people forget that, like, just because someone's playing really well for your club, if the national team's going to play a different style of play, that player might not fit, and that's often hard to understand. I mean, what I would say is my strengths were all about kind of cohesion and helping the team to perform. I'm not sure that necessarily gets you picked to play for your country. You probably need to really, really excel at something to play for your country, and maybe that's where I came a bit short. I was pretty good at everything, but I didn't really excel at any one thing, and that probably counted against me as much as anything else. But that was my makeup as a player. You know, I was fairly good at most things. So, you know, you if I don't get to wear the white shirt, then you don't. And what I will say is I'll be really honest and say, you know, playing next to someone like Courtney for so long, you know, Courtney was is now, you know, a different specimen to what I was. He is a fantastic world-class player, and very proud to have played next to him. But, you know, I know how good he is, and that's why he's got 100 caps for England.
You're on mute, Simon.
You're muted, Simon.
Sorry. We asked you this question, and just wondering, as we're coming towards the end of the career bit, is who was the best player you played with, against, and who do you wish you would have played with in your time?
I've done this question so many times. It's so hard to answer. There's the obvious ones. I mean, Jason Robinson was really special. He could turn a game on his head. At the time, he was a bit of an outlier. He was another kind of physical freak of an athlete. I always remember on a testing day, so I was good mates with Richard Wigglesworth, who was pretty fit at his time. And he broke the club record of something like 36 wide arm chins and was gloating about it. And Jason kind of came strolling in late and just was, what's the record? 36. All right. And he just got up and did 37. So he was physically a freak. So Jason's up there. Got to like Sergio Parise in Paris was unreal. So was Juan Hernandez, unreal talent of player. And then at Saints, Courtney is right up there. And then one who I don't think gets anywhere near the recognition he should is Stephen Myler. I don't think people quite realise how good a player he was. And, he got one England cap, probably deserved a lot more. That double winning season, he got man of the match in the European final and the Prem final. Superb player and a superb clubman for Saints as well, actually. Someone who didn't seek the limelight, but he kicked plenty of match-winning penalties. So another top-class player. Who did I not play with? He was really good. There aren't many, I mean, I look at some of the real superstars of the game, like Jonah Lomu. It would have been amazing to share a pitch with Jonah Lomu. One player who really was a top-class player, which was when I was really young, actually, was Matt Burke at Newcastle. Yeah. So he was like the bona fide Australia fullback at the time and came over as a world champion. He was a good player, really, really good player. Someone was on Twitter the other day talking about like the best Premiership 15 of kind of foreigners, and I had a stab at it, and it's actually unreal the number of amazing players who've played in the Premiership. So there's loads of amazing players.
Fair enough. Thank you.
With Courtney, obviously you've played with him for a long period of his career, but then there's been because he's played for so long, there's a long period of career since the end of yours to now. Do you look at him from when you were playing with him and then look at him now and think, wow, he's continued to become better and better? Or do you think he's always been as good as he is now?
I think he's miles better now. I honestly do. I think he is with a real good shout with Peter Steph-Detoy of being the best six in the world, which given his age and he's apparently retiring to France, I think he's an incredible player. He's become an incredible leader. I would say he probably didn't used to be that character, but I think he's kind of reluctantly stepped into that role. But in terms of what he can do now, I spoke about being good at everything. He genuinely probably is good at everything now, and close to a international class at every single aspect of his game. If I was going to be really, really critical, like restarts used to be a challenge for him, I would probably say I was better than him at restarts. I'm not sure anymore that's true. He's worked on it and developed it. And on Friday night, you saw him take several amazing restarts. About 4 or 5 years ago, he suddenly decided he needed to improve his ball carrying. He's now one of the best ball carriers in the Prem, which at his height and body shape is pretty impressive. He's always been world class at some things, and we all know what those things are. But I just think he's become such a well-rounded player, and he's a really well-rounded person with it. Actually, there's absolutely no arrogance with Courtney at all. He's a very solid, stable character who sets a great example for everybody. So Saints have been very lucky to have him.
No, I
Yeah.
couldn't agree more with that, to be honest. I think his distribution as well is underrated. How often he takes it at first receiver and sticks out perfect decision making and whatever. But yeah. In terms of so Courtney and the rest of the team, obviously massive day on Saturday. Do you have any views on the game or how do you think that will play out?
I think it's two good teams who play similar rugby, but not quite the same. I think Saints have a great shot at it. I think they've been the best team this year. The only thing that counts against them, but it counts against Bath as well, is that this team hasn't really been there before. I think, if you've played in finals before and lost a couple, you've got that experience and you tend to win the next one. Like this one for Saints for this group is pretty new, but it's the same for Bath, so I don't think it's a major disadvantage. I will say there's a little bit with this Saints team that it's now or never, because more than 1,000 Saints caps are walking out the door this summer, with Courtney, Alex Waller, Ethan Waller, Lewis Ludlam. So you've got I think their moment is now. I think it's going to be a really exciting game. I hope the weather stays dry and you're going to see loads of running rugby. I guess my nagging doubt with Saints is the kind of the physicality set piece aspect. That's my nagging concern, because I think every other facet of the game, they're a really, really good team. So that's the one now. But what I would say is that seems to have come really good in the last month or so. So I think there was a stat on Friday that Saints had won something like 5 penalties all season, and then they won 4 on Friday night. So it just shows you how sometimes a bit of mindset and a bit of adjusting little technique here and there, you can get some wins. So I'm excited to be there, excited to watch, and I hope it's a thriller. Obviously, with my my work hat on, I have to I support both teams equally. But I think it's great for the game, actually. The fact that sold out signs have gone up, and there's so many people on social media. Has anyone got a ticket? Has anyone got spare tickets? It shows the demand for this game. I think it's mega.
Yeah. Interesting point you made about neither team have been in a big final and won it and proven that sort of thing. Would you say, looking that 2011 European defeat in Cardiff was a major player and influence in ended up winning the league in 2014 for your side?
Yeah, I said earlier, I think we peaked a bit too quick, if I'm being honest. I think it's mad that we got to a European Cup final with a team whose average age was probably about 25. But we did, and we came really close. I actually think that, that we lost the Prem final, didn't we, the year before to Leicester. That's, that then sets you up. You've had that little setback, and the year after you properly go in firing, saying this is going to be our year. So I definitely think having that big game experience is good. I will say Saints have got 5 or 6 well-seasoned internationals in their team who absolutely will have played in those kind of big arenas and everything else. But I don't think it hurts to have had a bit of recency in the big finals. But like I said, it's not like Bath. If you had Saracens sat opposite you in the final, that they've been there so many times and they just have that knack of winning. Whereas for Saints versus Bath, it's a little bit of the unknown.
Yeah, I mean, did you have an idea when you were playing with him that Dowson would go on to not just coach this team, but coach this team into 3 semi-finals in a row, the final now on Saturday?
Yeah, he's a good friend and a smart guy. Always super high IQ rugby. I think he's very fortunate not fortunate, wrong word. He's landed at a club which I think has helped him. But massive credit to him, and to pick up DOR of the year, like you say, in only kind of second, third year, is a real testament to him and also to his coaching team around him. I don't think people sometimes realise how much work and effort and thought goes into constructing any professional sports team. not just rugby, but the amount of consideration that goes into recruitment, retention, kind of the physical preparation side of things with Tom Buller and his team. Recruitment is Paul Shields and his team. You've then got your coaching staff. You've got Sam Vesti, who's probably one of the most sought after attack coaches in world rugby. Like I said, the set piece is functioning with Ferguson and Trammer Craig. There's such a huge amount of effort that goes in before you even get to the players. Massive credit there. And I think a lot of new DLRs get taken by surprise a little bit and suddenly realise how much of their time is needed in so many different areas. So for him to be doing it at such a young age is amazing. And I hope for him he has a good weekend.
Obviously, in your career, you were a leader at the end of your career, and you were a line-out guru, whatever, leader, and that's part of the game. Did coaching or any of that ever interest you as post-career?
It did a little bit. I mean, I was that kind of player. I was the coach on the pitch. I was the person who knew all the calls and made sure everyone else knew what was going on and what we needed to do. That was my kind of super strength. So I had one or two people ask about what I intended to do, but I felt like I needed to step out of club rugby. I needed a bit of a break. I'd dragged my family around with me, and I really wanted to stop having to give up all my weekends and never be able to plan anything and not attend people's weddings and birthdays and all this stuff. I was ready just to step out of that club environment. The off-field aspect really does interest me, probably more than coaching. So I'm obviously in kind of a CEO role now. I did an MBA in kind of sports leadership, so that was always more where I was headed towards. I do love kind of the sports world. I'm really passionate about rugby, obviously, but sports full stop, it just really interests me. So I was always probably destined more for an off-field role than anything else, and that was where I ended up. Like I said, I've got massive respect for coaches and coaching. It just probably wasn't. It just wasn't for me, I don't think.
So am I right? So you're the general secretary for the RPA at the moment. Can you sort of give us an idea of what that includes and what you're doing in that role?
Yeah, so the RPA is the collective representative for elite players in England. So that's men and women, and would compose the men's Premiership, Great Britain Sevens, and the Red Roses and PWR. So really diverse group of players. My role is an elected role, so the members themselves voted me in January last year. It's obviously been a bit of a period of turmoil for rugby, to say the least. But our job really is to try and make players' job, both on and off the pitch, a little bit easier, and to give them support and protections wherever we can. So, the RPA can't solve everybody's problems. Things will always go wrong in professional sport with it being such a kind of contested and high pressure area, but we always want to be there to try and help players should they need it. And also collectively represent the players for their working conditions and the way things are. So coming to the end of a huge piece of work now around the new game agreement. And I've been, really forceful in that I believe players need to be seen as partners. They're not employees. And like I said, I'm a bit of a sports nerd, so I'm fascinated by American sport, Australian sport, and all the facets that go into that make them great. And I'm trying to, encourage rugby in this country to see the value in some of those things and bring them into our game.
Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously the players are a significant stakeholder in the sport, and they always will be. And then, I believe, is it the RPA are no longer representing them in the negotiations with England? Is that a change from the perspective of the players to move towards more of a different sort of negotiation stance, or is it there's a better way of doing it without conflict?
So the England team have been represented by the RPA since 2004, I think it is. So, nigh on 20 years. And that's the commercial representation. So still, the vast majority of England players will be RPA members, but they want their commercial rights to be represented effectively by a professional agency. That's a decision they've taken and one that I've got to accept. So it's just a bit of an evolution of what they're doing. It doesn't change what we do in terms of representing, the majority of players and in the English game.
Brilliant. I suppose there's also the sort of news that's come out recently around the stance that the Championship clubs are taking, and there's obviously a huge difference in the professional game between the Premiership and below. Is that something that the RPA get involved in, or is it just something that's completely, away from your sort of involvement?
So in terms of the Championship, upon election, I pledged that in 2025, which is when the new Tier 2 competition is supposed to start, is that the RPA would offer full membership to players at that level. It was something I did at PWR level as well. So last year we offered full membership to PWR players for the first time. We're closing in on 100 members in that group. And I'll do the same for the Championship in 2025, provided Tier 2 comes online. And that comes with some caveats for us. We expect minimums of how players should be treated. But I think that would be a really positive thing. I think it's something that players in the Championship have long said they would like. So it kind of dovetails with how I see that, the RPA should be an organisation for all. And if we can make that work for the Championship as well, we will do.
Yeah, because it's something like the UK has the largest number of professional rugby players out of all, so it's a challenge. It must be a huge challenge to try and represent everyone in the best way you can, obviously.
So the Welsh players have their own organisation, the Irish players, the Scottish players to a degree. The RPA represents English players or players based in England, so we will have South African, Australian members, all different nationalities. But our purpose is to make England the best place to play. That's what we want in terms of the best provisions for players. A lot of it's wrapped up in the standard contract that we negotiate, that all players sign. But also things like, I've been really quite outspoken about the need for a minimum wage for academy players, and that's something I'm really pushing, that I want to come in with the new game agreement in July.
Amazing. Yeah, thanks for being honest with those bits. They're probably not a bit further away from talking about your own career, but yeah. Last thing before you let you go, and I've got to apologise to everyone for asking this, but it's about MasterChef. That must have been an amazing experience to go on that, especially just after your career, do something completely different. And
yeah, it was a bit mad. So I retired and had some idle moments in the summer, and the advert kind of popped up to enter. I was like, sack it, I'll give it a go. Ended up on the show, and it was great fun. Had a great time. Met some nice people along the way. Still can't believe they kicked me off in 5th place. That was very unfair. But the mad thing about MasterChef was that it aired in lockdown. So the viewing figures were absolutely outrageous. So I think one of my episodes broke the viewing figure record for MasterChef. Something like 9.8 million people watched me doing canapes or whatever, which is crazy when you think like a TNT game will get 200,000 watching. Nearly 10 million people tuned in to watch that, and it's a bit humbling, to be honest, that the majority of times if people stop me now to say hello or they want an autograph or a photo, it's because of MasterChef, not because of rugby. And that even, I go to lots of grounds and try to watch games and show my face, and invariably people will want to ask about MasterChef. I got stopped at the station recently and I assumed it was rugby. No, it was MasterChef. You're Christian off MasterChef, aren't you? So it's it does let you know how big kind of entertainment TV can be. You forget that not everyone, I exist in this bubble where rugby is everything, but for a lot of people, MasterChef's everything. So it's a bit of an eye opener.
And one of the run. This I apologise again for this question, but we spoke about it for one of the running feedback. I love the show as well, right? And one of the running feedback you got was the lack of seasoning. Do you think that being a rugby player perhaps influenced your unwillingness to put a bit of salt on there?
No, I think that was a load of rubbish, to be honest. There was one, they've always got to say something to critique or whatever. I actually think probably in the early rounds that there was one time where I didn't season enough or whatever. You can forget when the pressure's on or whatever. But there was one bit where he criticised me about not enough butter in the mashed potato, and I'd actually followed what's called Robichon's mashed potato recipe, where 50% of the weight is butter. So 50% of this mashed potato was butter, and he criticised that I didn't put enough butter in. I was like, it's ridiculous. But I managed to keep my mouth shut. It's difficult when you're kind of being judged on that kind of thing, because, like I say, it's a TV show at the end of the day. You've got to remember, and they've got to say something for the camera to listen to.
Yeah, brilliant. I love the fact that everyone, people will be listening to this fit to get insight into your career at Northampton, and we're asking you about how did you agree that the lamb wasn't rendered properly? Did you know that as soon as you came out the oven?
Yeah, I messed up on the lamb. I admit that. That was unfortunate. It's crazy that when the show aired, they obviously had like an advert for the new season, and my face kind of flashed on the screen for about half a second, and the number of people who messaged me saying, "Is that you?" and at the time I had to deny it. But on that episode, they flashed up like 10 plates from the show to kind of show the level of cooking, and I think 3 of them were mine, including the one that got me kicked off. So I was like, the fact that I featured as the kind of the most impressive looking plates, and then that was the one that got me kicked off. Like I said, I'm not bitter in the slightest, but it was really good fun. Like I said, I'm still in contact with some of the people who were on it with me, and Courtney's sold me as an auction in his testimonial year, so I've got to do a big dinner for him soon. So it was good fun.
I would say that year was definitely a high standard, so you should take that one for sure.
Of course.
Brilliant, Christian. It's been an honour and privilege to have you on the show. Really grateful. Unless Si or Jess have got anything else to ask, we'll let you go. And like I said, it's been an honour having you on.
No, just to thank you so much for coming on. Yeah. It's a real privilege and an honour to speak to a true Saints legend. So thank you very much.
No, thank you. It's been a pleasure being on. I hope it goes well, and good luck for this weekend.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone much for listening, everyone, and please remember to follow us on socials and let us know how this goes. But thank you very much.